Good morning. Back Monday. Back to routine. What I want to cover in this video is how war affects children. There will be a video that where I will cover how war affects women, but that will be a separate video. I have briefly covered how it affects how war affects kids and children in two of my videos. One of them is war and its long-term consequences, and also in my the Taliban and why I believe I've covered this too, as to where the base of the Taliban came from. So, general, this is not specific to any country. Some countries are worse, have far worse consequences than others, but the consequences are bad. They're horrible. So it affects kids. Obviously, the first consequence is trauma, because there's just a lot of. Even at home, right, when parents have a conflict with each other, it affects the kids negatively. Now you take that and you have a war zone where things are blowing up, bombs are landing, gunfire, battles. That all mentally and in the kid's brain, permanent, not temporary, guys, permanent damage. That's just something that as their brain is in growth, their brain is growing. I might be way over my head in this, but I think the consensus of people who study the brain is the brain always rewires itself in order in the circumstances that you are in. So if you are in a war zone where there's a lot of conflict, a lot of violence going on around you, the brain will see permanent damage, and it's going to rewire itself. Rewiring is probably a fancy term, but it's going to condition, perhaps it's probably a better word to use. It's going to condition your brain in the flight and fight mode constantly, because you have this anxiety, you have this trauma, you have this fear of being killed. So what do? You either fight and die, most likely, or die without even fighting, or you run. So both of them have very bad consequences on the brain and your growth. That's one. Second, the innocence of the kids and the children and their chance of an early education, if any, later on, is taken away. So they cannot have a peaceful life, they cannot play outside, they cannot make stable friends, they cannot have a life, an early childhood life that any kid should have and must have, actually, and deserves to have. That's gone. Okay, that's all gone. You live in a constant fear. Most likely you will be killed if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, and usually that's what happens. Parents get killed or injured, so there's that trauma now. So that the whole parenthood is taken away from you. Parenting is not there because the family has to worry about survival. So you are in the back burner. So it's just, I know it's easy to say these things, guys, but just for a second, just imagine how it affects kids. It takes their life away that you cannot give back. It causes permanent damage in the brain, permanent trauma that gets passed on from generation to generation. Some might get very lucky to actually get out of that situation and lead a good, stable lives, albeit with that trauma in them. They will just be able to manage that trauma in their heads as much as they can, but most and perhaps they will probably keep, once they have kids, they will keep their kids in a place where they do not have to go through that. So example is my parents. They did that. It's just by luck, by pure luck, that I managed to build a life and have a relatively really good childhood. Things were not great, but looking back, I did have a very privileged childhood, and I was away from a lot of things that a lot of my peers, kids around my age, had to go through. So it's a very grim subject. I can go on and on, but those are the main things. Permanent trauma, permanent damage, your childhood taken away from you, your good memories are not there, your parents are taken away from you. Worst case, both of them die, so you end up an orphan, which happens. It happens a lot. Or one of your parents dies, so mom is gone, dad is gone. That's taken away from you. Every single thing that a kid should have is taken away. Yeah, that's it, guys. 5 minutes. I think that's enough. So keep that in mind, guys, about wars. No matter where it is, no matter who is going through it, keep that in mind. Yes, I made a video about how people don't care unless it affects them. It's very true, guys, and that's why it's so depressing. Other people go through this, they're like, oh, sorry. But when it happens to them, of course you wouldn't want anyone to go through this. Then they are like, oh, this is wrong. Yeah, it is, it's wrong. It's wrong when it happens to you, and it's wrong when it happens to them. Okay, it does not make it okay for children to go through any of that. Not just your kids, but anybody's kids. Yep, that's it, guys.